Recording in progress.
Hey guys, I guess with the fundamentals coming out, we're going to be talking about, and I'll be presenting on programming and how we here at Performation kind of structure programming, what we consider for each athlete, how we kind of come up with different, I guess, solutions for different athletes, and how we kind of change things and how generally specific or individualized we go for different athletes and different people in general, kind of how or why we do certain things. So I'm going to go over today kind of just a quick little snippet of what I'll be talking about in the way that I'll be talking about it and how I'm going to go over everything. So, first we'll be talking about the different kind of considerations we use for different athletes. You've got size, shape, weight, gender, all these different things. Also we have like training age and someone's general age, and how that can differentiate how we're going to write a program, how kind of specific we can be with someone, how unspecific we can be with another person, and also different considerations on how we'd program someone, I guess, if they've been training longer and being more powerlifting specific, if we're going to dive in more into powerlifting, and what the differences could be. What I found from working with a lot of different athletes with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different levels in where they are in their own powerlifting career, just what I've found has worked in the past, and just kind of my understanding of why that's worked, and all these sorts of things. And also we're going to be other things, what they do for work, other external factors that play into it. A lot of things that we've already discussed on our podcast and YouTube channel, which I guess a lot of the people that will be doing our fundamentals would have already listened to or looked at before. But this is going to be a deeper dive, I suppose, into the way that we go about things. We're obviously going to go around how to structure a program. I've already done a kind of very basic one of the YouTube video on this, on how kind of I structure something based on an individual and the way that they, I believe they're going to respond because of just, working with so many different athletes, how I've come to kind of be able to have this kind of methodology behind each individual athlete, just because I've worked with, people of all different weight ranges, different sexes, different, different leverages and everything. How we're going to program primary, secondary, tertiary, what they also mean as well. These different days, they're kind of really kind of pronounced at the moment. These different names for different days: primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. All these kind of days are kind of, they're spoken a bit too much about at the moment. So I'm going to want to go over why they're like this, how something is determined to be secondary or primary or tertiary, why it actually is that way, what it actually means, and how as a coach we program this way while also getting the most out of each day. I'm very big on the fact that each day needs to be attacked with the same kind of intent. So, a lot of athletes will buy into the fact that a secondary day may not take it as serious as something like a primary day or a tertiary day. Whereas how a coach, we can kind of program this in a way where it will be still as intentional as we need it to be, because we need to see progression through these other days as well to get stronger. It's not just about progressing on a primary day, not at all. We need to be able to, these other days build that primary day, and they build throughout a block, and that's how we get stronger overall. Accessories as well. Why we select certain accessories, where we're going to put them, reasoning behind, could it be a leverage thing? Could it be the way that, someone's built, a long femur type lifter, because they have these longer levers, they've got to move the bar further when they squat potentially, am I going to belt squat them more frequently because I'm not going to be able to get as much comp specific work in because it's just far too taxing on their system. How are we going to structure rest days, how many days a week someone can specifically train, how to make a lift show up on a specific day, we'll go over as well, the amount of days between each lift, whether something bleeds too much into something, how we can adjust things throughout a block without actually changing the structure of the actual layout, how we can get something to show up on a specific day. And how I've done this in the past, what I've done just by observing, paying attention, and just being able to kind of adjust things. I wouldn't say on the fly, but after a week or two of, seeing poor results on a day that I want to see good results, how I've kind of adjusted things to make it show up when I wanted it to show up, just also for an athlete's peace of mind as well. We're going to go over intro weeks, how we do them, why we do them, the difference between probably an intro week and a deload week and what that's about, how much we're going to drop off. Do we need to drop off much at all? Someone responds, can we just look back at, the data that we already have for an athlete to be able to determine what an intro week is? Now, we always want to start a block with this new baseline that we've created from the block before, and how we are going to go about starting off a new block. There's also other things, someone's progressing really, really well throughout a block. And this is just, you're just noticing there's just good trends everywhere. We're going to have the discussion of, sometimes the best thing for us to do, or the hardest decision for us to make, is to make no changes at all. And we'll go over all that through this webinar series. So we'll go over, someone progressing too fast, too slow, why this is happening, how we can adjust this to happen. If someone's getting, too much, I guess, I won't say momentum, but if they're progressing really, really fast, okay, are their muscle fibers keeping up? Do you need to make an adjustment? Do you need to pull the pin a little bit earlier just so we can let them recover and let everything else catch up, so we can keep pushing forward? Because I know we kind of would love to just go straight, linear, get stronger all the time. Sometimes this isn't beneficial for an athlete long term, and they'll start to run into issues quite frequently if you just don't touch anything or just dial things back when it's needed. How we find someone's block length, how this also changes over time. Someone's block length that you, I guess, find for the first time is not always going to be that way. It may last a block or two or three, and then eventually it could change. Could get shorter, could get longer. It's going to be dependent on a lot of different things, how strong they get, these new baselines that they get. But we'll deep dive a lot into that, because that's something that took me a while to get my head around as well, and how I've now adjusted things and my thought process around all of that. What happens, if there's someone comes to you and says, we know that their ideal block length, they run for about 8 to 9 weeks or something like that, and then they generally need either some sort of deload or resensitization before they can run again. They come to you, 4 weeks into a block, and they tell you they want to compete in 8 weeks. How you can make an adjustment there to kind of get things rolling into that meet for them. There's also the way, how to tell if something is working, tell if something isn't working. And this happens block to block. You can't just straight off the bat go and blame something, although there is certain circumstances where you will find out you could add something in and just, straight away the results aren't what you expected. They're quite poor, and you could just pin something for a week, tell an athlete to not worry about it, and that's where you'll get a almost instant kind of response, and you'll be able to be like, okay, this is something that needs to change. It's the only thing that I really added into a block, because as a block goes on, we don't want to change too much at all, and why this might have happened. We're going to go over peaking and obviously tapering as well. The difference, thought processes behind peaking and tapering at the moment. Is it a lot different to general training? Is there what's different? How it can be different for each athlete? We're going to have some athletes who, I guess, can push things a bit harder in training and get away with it. Some that can't. So some that can only really do it in a peak. Some that can do it quite frequently. So their peak may not look too different to their general training. And then on the other hand, the guys that can only push, I guess, in a peak. So their peak will look drastically different to their general sort of training. How we make things sharp on a competition specific day, how we drive that fatigue, how much fatigue we want to drive into the system, because obviously we're trying to push it to a certain point where obviously we're trying to push performance trends up, but that could take a hit if you drive too much fatigue in the system. Okay, and how we, if we look at like a longer macro cycle, and we know, how or when someone's going to be competing, how we can build into this meet, how we peak, or how we know how to peak someone if they're going to be doing back-to-back comps, which, in Australia is very, very common at the moment, because we have so many hurdles to get through the main stage. So we find people having to do local comps into state comps, into national meets, straight back into another local meet. So it's like we're just running this back-to-back cycle, and how we can sort of either capitalize on that by gathering data through peaks and just training in general, or how we can maybe look at a bigger picture as well. And then obviously tapering, how everyone's tape is different, how it's different to a deload. Also how much someone needs to taper. It's going to be completely individualized. Whether we need to reduce volume and intensity, or whether we only need to reduce one, or whether we can, could just be reducing a little bit of intensity, keeping volume relatively the same. I've done some extremely unorthodox things with some great results before, and it's going to be something that we'll touch on quite a bit throughout the fundamentals course, and how long we taper someone, whether that be a week, whether that be different for each lift, which predominantly is, a lot of people can take longer to recover, to show up their strongest on a specific day for a certain lift. And we'll go over that, really dive deep into that, and how it's different for a lot of different individuals as well. And I guess we'll also go over the level of fatigue and tiredness that someone carries into a meet, and the discussions that we're going to have with an athlete in terms of, is this fatigue from peaking for a competition, or is this general tiredness from outside things? They're going to be kind of rolling in together at the same time when you're peaking someone into a meet, and discussions that will need to be had, and kind of how you can look at the data that they're providing you to be able to make a decision on how you're going to taper someone, because the taper can sometimes become the most important part of a peak. You can have a fantastic peak. You can peak someone into a meet almost to the strongest they've ever been a week or two out, and then absolutely butcher their taper, and they just won't show up meet day. And how you're going to be able to determine how much they need to pull, or how much they don't need to pull out of that, where these trends are going a few weeks out, and what you're going to kind of, how to adjust going into the meet. So this will be some of the things that we go over, and I can't wait to see you guys there. Thank you. Hey.